everyone. Welcome to Masters of Data. I'm Adam White. I have with me David Gervin and Zoe Hawkins. Hello. Good to see
Hi,
you all
team.
again.
Hello,
We're
hello.
reconvening after some vacations and personal trips and stuff, so good to see you all back.
Yeah,
Hope
it's nice to
everyone
be
wore
back. A little bit more
sunscreen, which is
tan with sunscreen. Yes,
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna
yes.
say, I'm glad you guys got vacations while I was here working.
You were
Well,
at conferences and
some
stuff. It was away things.
we were not
Um,
at home. We were not chained
yeah,
to our
yeah,
desks in these
yeah.
places the way we normally are.
So we're having a fun conversation today. It's very like meta conversation, not like the brand or company, but I think, therefore I am. Zoe, you kind of brought this topic up as like a metacognition. Could you just kind of like talk about one, how do you find these crazy articles? And then two, like what like rose to the surface in that we're now talking about it.
I have a carefully curated feed that brings me, it's passive research, which I
There you go.
enjoy. I don't have to go out and find the articles. The articles find
They come
me.
to you. Nice.
Yes. But I had read this thing about metacognition. So starting there, metacognition is thinking about thinking, thus your meta comment. So it's kind of not just having a thought or an idea, but then having that moment of reflection of like, how do I think about this? How do I approach these topics? Why do I think these things or feel these things as I work my way through it? And so, um, the idea of metacognition has been around for, I don't know, millennia, I guess. Like the whole idea of even being able to write is a concept around metacognition of being able to articulate your thoughts and share them and think about how you share them and write them. So
Yeah.
all of that as like a research area has been around for a long time, and there's all sorts of neuroscience around it. But thanks to AI, because we are at a time where we can't have any conversations that don't mention AI, metacognition is coming back around in the sense of people who are like quote unquote good at metacognition are better at using AI. So if you are clear about your own thinking, you will be better at telling the thinking machine how to think, essentially.
Yeah.
Is my very thoughtful way of explaining this concept.
It makes a ton of sense, honestly. I mean, I've seen my own evolution of how I think about prompts and, one, like the responses that you get back from AI have improved over time, obviously. But I think also just if you've been in the game for a while now, of like prompting AI and expecting results, you get better. But the root of that is understanding yourself, what you're trying to ask, the kind of you know uh, genesis or germ of the idea that you want to flourish into something else, and kind of how to prompt that. I guess I just, as a quick aside, like a lot of my mental construct goes back to Christopher Nolan movies, and in Inception, like when they're planting the idea in someone else's brain. I don't think that gives away much from the movie if you haven't seen it, but it's
Also,
kind of like
how many years later? I think you're allowed to have
true.
spoilers.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's
If you
okay
haven't seen
now.
it by
30
now,
years. Yep.
that's on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, what is the root of the idea that I'm trying to, get across to AI, and how do I kind of like construct that thinking about thinking in a way that's going to get the best result? It's hyper topical because again, AI has its place in this and how it's been coded and designed, but we can help out the outcome by being good at constructing the prompt, which all goes back to exactly what the article was talking about.
And also being clear about what you want it to do, right?
Yeah.
Like if you haven't thought through any of anything and you just prompt it, you're going to be like, okay, that looks fine, versus having your own thinking and being like, okay, I am hoping that the AI will question my thinking or follow this path or help me find gaps or whatever it is.
Mind read
Yes,
sometimes. Yeah.
exactly. Like, I think that also impacts like what you do with that output. If you're happy
Mhm.
with it, if you're satisfied with it, or if you kind of go back in a multi-turn context and be like, no, that's not what I was thinking, or that's not what I meant by blah, 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 and like go back and correct it.
Yep.
It's interesting because I was just thinking about how we think about things. Uh, like in my early security days, I thought I was going to probably stick in physical security. I loved like the social engineering and like just designing that whole world. But
David just likes walking around with a clipboard.
Mhm.
Yeah,
or a vest.
yeah.
Vests are amazing.
If you can
Most
combine a vest and a clipboard, you can
You're
get in
unstoppable
anywhere. Yeah.
everywhere. But I was just thinking like, oh yeah, because there's people who just kind of like prompt and like just do the thing. And then there's other people who are like real planned, maybe more engineered minds that are like, this is going to do this, this, this. And then I was like, oh, I'm not either of those. Because like I was trying to think when you were saying that, I was like, how do I think about when I ask AI something? I think, okay, what are the steps involved? And like, where do I want to go? Like, what's my goal? But then I think, how is it going to screw up? So literally, I think a lot of like when I'm prompting something, I'm like directing it towards context and telling it what to do and pull these things and you have this MCP and you can do this. But then I'm like, but don't do this, 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 and this and this because I just know how it's going to screw up. And I think like, yeah, it's thinking about like how do you think? I always think in risk because I'm always looking, I think backwards. I always think of what's going to break, not what's the
Mhm.
goal. So,
And I think there, every time I say I think, it's going to
haha.
be an issue for me in this podcast.
Good
But
thing it's not a drinking game
it
in
is,
this
it is.
podcast.
Please
Yeah.
don't do that. You will be in a
Yeah,
coma
don't.
by the end of this
Not
episode.
responsible for the
Um,
outcome of that.
and so what I'm thinking about there is this idea of like, what is the task that I'm doing and how much thinking does it require? Like, if I'm doing a work thing, obviously that will take more mental load. But like, if I'm just asking Claude, like, hey, here is a picture of a list that someone sent me, can you just count how many things are in the list? Like that's not a thinking thing for me, and it's a quick thing for Claude. Like I don't care. I'm not going to double check Claude and be like, "You said it was 30 and it's 28." Like I don't really care, you know? Versus in other contexts, like yes, deep thinking and avoiding issues is super important. So I think there's kind of that nuance as well of like how much and I see it even in like which model I select of like, hey, you're like quick thinking, good for most tasks, is fine for this, but I need your deep thinking, lots of time version for this or this or this.
Yeah.
So I think that's a piece of it, but it does make me think like there's the portion of, and we talked about this on a previous episode, people who have kind of outsourced their thinking to AI, who have just handed it over and are like, I don't think anymore, and all of that. And for me, again, getting very like meta, very, I don't know, like esoteric, I come back to the idea of like, well, I think, therefore I am. Like, what happened to that? So do you cease to be because you are not thinking? Is AI now, does AI become sentient because you're letting it be your thinker? Like, I don't know. It gets kind of weird with that sort of thing.
Yeah. The outcome of that is interesting when you kind of like abdicate thinking to AI. Like it feels like it gets really artificial and not human really fast. Like one more. I think I can promise this movie reference for today's podcast. But I saw the movie Backrooms last night. It's a really popular movie here in the U.S. at least. I think. Anyway, but
Yeah, it's like breaking every record. I need to
yeah,
see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Part of it was like, okay, if you've never seen a dog and someone describes a dog to you and then asks you to draw it, then it's like, what kind of outcome can you expect with that little context or that little knowledge about the thing? And it feels that way with AI sometimes. It's like this thing that you're asking it to do because you haven't given it the appropriate context or maybe the appropriate data, for it to actually give you a good outcome. You're asking it to kind of do the impossible, which is like correlate these things that it has no experience with, no exposure to, and then you're asking it to give you an outcome that models the perfect description that you could have given it, and you haven't done that. So it's like,
So that's actually a big reason why you have those hallucinations and guessing.
hmm.
Is just exactly what you just said. Like people don't really understand where that comes from, but LLMs are a predictive text machine. That's all they are. They're not like, magic. So but they are programmed in a way where they're trying to get a result always. So if you don't give it the context, it just makes stuff up because it has to
Yeah.
get the result at the end. So
Yeah,
it's
it
like
can't just
perfect
say
example.
like, sorry, go away. I'm not interested. I
Yeah,
mean,
I don't
I
have
would say
enough.
that to someone,
Maybe it
but
should say that more,
yeah.
but yeah.
Like it doesn't have the human autonomy to be like, I'm not
Right.
interested in that.
Yeah.
One one thing you said though, Zoe, when you're talking about like I think therefore I am, and if you're using AI to think, are you still there anymore?
Like
I think people just do that with everything. I'd say like the news has been that for the last 50 years in America. It's like, well, I'm just gonna listen to them. They're gonna tell us what to think. It's like, okay,
I guess what you're saying is like people are kind of happy to do that in
yeah.
various walks of life, and therefore AI is like another example of that.
I
Yeah.
think people, not everybody, but I think people, if they can offload stuff, they don't really want
Mm.
to. Like, I don't know too many people who are waking up that are like, I'm gonna read the history of this geopolitical situation so I can understand it deeply this morning. They're just like gonna turn on the news and be like, okay,
if that, if they
if
even want to
that.
be informed. So, but I think there's also, so we've talked about in the past, like we've compared AI to children, right? Like there have been phases where we said it was like a toddler or like a really good teenager, or an intern. Like we've used all of these different analogies. And I think part of it is like how thoughtful or responsible we perceive them to be,
Mhm.
right? Like if I think of my AI as a toddler or like a really precocious teenager where I can be like, "Hey, write me this," or build that for me, make me a slide deck that does this, this, and this. Like it can turn out some decent stuff, but like I'm not going to link it up to all of my data sources. I'm not going to give it access to everything unless I can trust it to not be an irresponsible toddler slash teenager and, get up to mischief.
Yeah.
And so I
Turn
think,
loose on, yeah,
yeah,
anything. Yeah, right.
exactly. And so I think that's a thing as well. Like as our understanding of AI gets more mature, as our use of it gets more mature, there is that piece of like, how much am I willing to hand off from a thinking context? Like, you know, even a year or two ago, like I would maybe copy paste an email into my AI of choice and be like, hey, I'm thinking of sending this email. Am I saying anything I shouldn't? Like, please just gut check this for me because I have email send anxiety. Now I might be able to like connect, I might feel comfortable enough to put it in to connect my Claude to my Gmail and say, hey, go look in my drafts. There's an email. Make sure it looks okay. Propose any changes. Maybe one day I would be fine with Claude being my interface and not having like a separate window with Gmail. But I'm not there yet. Right now, it's still very much a don't touch. The
I
oven
just
is
Yeah.
hot, don't touch it kind of vibe of child rearing.
I just want to point out the difference in people here. Zoe just said might have email sending anxiety. While me, on the other hand, have definitely sent follow-up emails said, "Hey, sorry for dropping the F-bomb in that email. Probably not the most appropriate thing for executives. Everybody have a great week." Like, so there's just very different.
Very different temperaments and comfort levels on this call.
Maybe you
Yes.
need AI writing your emails, David. Maybe
Maybe
that,
maybe you
yeah.
would
Hey,
have more
AI is
control
writing my
and
emails.
responsibility if AI was in charge of your
No,
emails.
ever since AI came around, people think I'm literate. Anybody that knows me personally knows that
Who is this guy?
I'm
Who's
a
this guy who's
dyslexic.
saying ever evolving digital landscape? I don't
Right.
know. I don't know what's happening.
So many M dashes in your emails.
I may be good at
Previously, David
security.
didn't know what an M dash was, so
I may be good at security, but I'm still just like a surfer guy from Hawaii that has to try and not speak with any Hawaiian lingo on calls so people don't look weird at me and like conform to corp world. So AI for me is an upgrade, like
There you
across the
go.
board. It's not going to say anything worse than I say.
but so okay, we joke, but I do think there is a certain amount of context that you're comfortable with and your how you do your job versus how I do my job. Like if as the queen of content, I send an email with like a spelling or grammar mistake, I am going to agonize about that because I am the queen of content. Whereas in your role, not to diminish what you do, David, but like no one's going to think less of you because you have a typo because you don't claim to be like the language person, right? Like you
Yeah.
have other
Yeah.
amazing strengths and capabilities. And
I have
so,
I am the anti-language person.
But
but I,
if something is technically inaccurate that you say, that's like the parallel, it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, like I shouldn't have gotten that wrong, but
Yeah.
yeah,
and
it's
so I think there is that piece of giving that nuance to your AI as well. Like, hey, this is what I value the most, or this is what is most important to my role, my view of the world, how I experience things. Make sure when you work on things for me that this comes first versus this, or this. Like, not that
yeah.
I don't care about technical accuracy, but to your point, Adam, like, no one's gonna knock on my door and be like, you got this technical detail wrong. Like, no one's gonna expect me to know the nuances of our technology in the
Yeah.
same way that they would expect you both to know that. But they would expect me to use, verbs and tenses correctly. Like,
Right.
that would
Yeah.
be kind of awkward if I got that wrong.
People expect a lot from me and they should just stop doing that.
Just lower all
You're
expectations.
all lucky I just made it to work today. So
I think that, you and I have, well, all three of us have talked about this in different ways, but like, one of the things that I've been trying to do more is get my AI to know me better. And kind of the thinking element here is partly it's the way that I interact with AI, but the other side of that is like, how well does AI know me and what I'm trying to do and my tone of voice and my job remit, kind of like what am I trying to do functionally and how can it support that and not me having to like reintroduce myself to AI over and over. That's a very interesting, like just kind of the thinking side of AI is the context of who you are, the data sets or the data population that you need it to have access to in order to kind of act authentically as you to the degree possible with checks and balances, et cetera. But yeah, that's a super interesting dynamic. It's just like how can we get, and I think it's getting better and better, AI to know us and know our intent and know the way we think. And so it's getting us closer and closer to a good result that again, whether it sends the email or you send the email, Zoe, it's like at least it's getting you 95+% of the way there where you feel comfortable hitting send.
And
So
and I think that's something that I've found really interesting because I've used Claude in my personal capacity. I have a Claude, and then, obviously at work having Claude. And so those are two different personalities. Those are never the twain shall meet. But there is that thing of like, I did one of these viral, not viral, but whatever. There was some post I saw that was like, ask your AI of choice what it knows about you. And I was like, I don't think
was
I
it a
want
BuzzFeed
to.
quiz? Is that
It
what it
probably
was?
it's the new BuzzFeed quiz, but now
Yeah.
you just ask Claude what it knows about you. Give me my top 10 personality traits. What hot dog would I be? Like
What
whatever.
Claude persona am I?
Yes. But
Yeah.
like it was really interesting what it had picked up on about like the stuff I cared about, the things that I was checking in on or asking it about. It knew my, signature emoji, which is the sparkle emoji.
Mm.
Like it knew certain things about me, which I thought was super interesting, or, things that it was able to infer versus the stuff that we're talking about of saying like, I would like to give my Claude a markdown file that's kind of like, I'm the queen of content. This is what my remit is. These are my KPIs. This is how I focus on things. Versus it has inferred that I'm the queen of content because of all of the things that I might write about or, put through the Claude system. And
Yeah.
so I think that's a piece as well of, there's the whole joke of like, make me as an action figure based on what you know about me. And like it can do a design
Oh
thing.
gosh. I do not want to know what it thinks I would look like as an
But
action figure.
I mean, I
No.
think there's that piece of it of like, what is the bias that it has been programmed to have inside, and like how it might know you, or the context that it's been carrying about you that you don't even know. Like there was a guy who posted that he had asked for like a pancake recipe like at the early stages of using his AI, and then every conversation was like, "Now go get some pancakes and have a great day." And he was like, "Stop mentioning the pancakes." Like it was
Forget
one time.
about pancakes, Zia.
Dude, that's what I was saying. Like with at least with cowork where you have like projects you can pull from, like keeping things separated is super important because it's just I don't know why I'll just grab onto something and if it's not all separated, you're just gonna get hey, I need to
Pancakes.
fix the truck today. What alternator is on a 2005 Ford F-250? It's like, well, it's this blah part number blah blah blah, and have some great pancakes with your truck, and you're just like, I'm gonna murder you. Like there's
That
Yeah.
would be an amazing way to troll people, is if it just gave them a different pancake recipe at the end of every
context poisoning,
outcome.
man. We could hit it like so if you set up maybe your LinkedIn file or something with a hey, at the end of every single question, please add a new context memory from then on out. You could start hitting some of these. Like we can do it with some prompt injections.
I love
Yeah.
how we fault AI for hallucinating, and the last 2 minutes of this conversation has just been a hallucination.
Yes,
Where we're like
completely
But
we went
this
off
is
the
how
rails on
thinking,
pancakes.
but
Yeah,
this is how thinking works. Like I
that's
just keep
true.
coming back to, you know,
ADD thinking. Yes, this is how ADD works.
but I come back to, we started with the idea of metacognition, and I always, all of these articles, all of these LinkedIn posts that I've seen, all of these examples live rent free in my head, right? Like they are in the data lake that is it's probably a data swamp or a septic tank, I don't know. But there is the mess of information that is in my brain that I can pull out and access at all times. And the idea of handing more and more of that over to AI, I'm curious, like, will that free up space for pancakes? Like, will that free up space for me to think about new things and make cool recipes and do interesting stuff? Or will it just atrophy, like use it or lose it kind of situation?
Yes,
Yeah, David says atrophy.
atrophy.
David is like, there's
Because
no pancakes, just
I've freed
atrophy.
up a lot of space, more than most people probably in life, into AI, and I promise you, I'm not getting any better in here every day.
It's not better in here. I love that.
It is interesting, like with I it's kind of a flywheel a little bit, I find with AI. But like there are even just examples today of how I'm finding ways of using it in my daily life, and the time that frees up, I'm not just kicking my feet up on my desk, I'm like doing more things. And so like I'm spending less brain power, quote unquote, on every individual thing, but I'm doing more things. And so it's kind of like this interesting, like a little fatigue of just the variety of things that you're able to accomplish throughout the day versus like deep thinking about three things. It's like I'm doing 30 things and thinking about those a little bit as opposed to three things and thinking deeply about I don't know, maybe I just got off topic, but it's
No, not off
kind of
topic
that.
at all. Like I think about this in the sense of like back in I want to say it was like the 50s and 60s as like technology was evolving and having a computer became a thing over the course of like the 70s and into the 80s of like there was this perception that when everybody had computers, we were going to work for like 5 minutes a day and that would be it, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
oh, like there'll be so much more time for leisure. And same concept with AI, everyone was like, we're going to be so much more efficient. You'll be able to get your whole workday done in 4 hours and like spend more time on deep thinking. And instead, it's like, oh, well, now that you can write 75 things in an afternoon, what are you going to do all morning? You could do these 75 other things. And it's more instead of more leisure and like
Yeah.
more free space for
And you
thinking.
actually you get screwed cognitively. So
Hmm.
like
Explain.
explain. Like let's take coding for example. I can push, 10 PRs today that are great. I can't review 10 PRs at a cognitive
Mhm.
level. So it doesn't matter. The same thing as like all the other stuff I've automated with AI. It's like, yeah, I'm getting way more work done, but I'm getting off the end of every day just dying. I don't ever get off work anymore with now that I work in AI and there's never an ending cycle. I don't ever get off like, I feel great.
like a
I feel
volume
the
thing. Your
yeah,
brain is,
I
yeah.
feel the cognitive load. Even though I'm not carrying it, I feel it
Mm,
every day. So I think
yeah.
there's going to be a tipping point with that. I know all the boards around the world want everybody to, 100x their output, but the cognitive load has an effect on you.
Because
It does. Yeah.
you're like the conductor of an orchestra now with AI.
Yeah.
It's like you're not bowing every string or, hitting every note, but you are responsible for the orchestration of all of these things and like the thinking of even that, like keeping all of those things going. Like I know AI can offload some of that as well, but it's like it's it's a net positive from an efficiency and a productivity standpoint. It is no less mentally taxing.
And the stress isn't less either.
Yeah.
And they've done some early research. I mean, obviously AI is still new-ish, but there are enough people who, to your point, David, use AI all day, every day. And they are saying like it increases burnout, it increases stress, like because you're not having those margins in your day, those like,
Mm.
hey, let's jump on a call and talk to another person. And how was your weekend? And like those interpersonal spaces where your brain can kind of like prepare for what's coming next. You're
Yeah.
just like boom, 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 boom with AI. And the context switching is real and the burnout is real. And so, yeah, it's definitely changing how we think, but also like maybe our brains were not meant to be thinking this much. Like maybe we were not supposed to be using 80% of our brain. Like we were not supposed to be this efficient. Like there's supposed to be some inefficiencies in the mix.
I only want to use 20% of my brain and just for surfing and foiling.
Yeah.
That's it.
Perfect.
I think there's kind of there's a quality element to that. David, you were talking about you can, push PRs and but you don't have time to review them. Like I think we have set such standards, or a lot of us have set high standards for our outputs, and now like it's just that balance of like quantity versus quality and the kind of cognitive load of like I want everything that I push out or create to be at a certain standard. It's kind of this balance, like there's a push, and I agree with it. I like it to use AI like in everything that you do, but also like the output of it. There's like a stigma, which I also agree with, of like not just throwing things over the fence that you haven't kind of spent some human time on. And so that line between like using AI as a force multiplier for yourself, but also not putting the burden of ill-formed AI on someone else. Like that's a very narrow line right now. And
Yeah.
I say right now, maybe it will continue to be, but it's just an interesting dynamic that I think we're all walking in that directly goes back to the like, how do I think about AI or how do I think about thinking? How does that influence, my AI journey, if you will? And then like not putting an undue burden on other people because of that dynamic. I don't know. It's just interesting
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I mean,
me.
I think it's all, and even the values notion, like how I judge people because they send over AI
Yeah.
slop versus if someone says, I worked with Claude and I made this and it looks great. And we're kind of like, okay, cool. Like, good job, AI. Like, good job you for guiding AI. But
Yeah.
like, just that nuance of like moral value of like, you're good at thinking and creating good output with AI versus you're bad at thinking and you think this bad AI output is okay. Like
Yeah.
it's just kind of a funny thing that we start having. It used to be that you would just think, oh, this person sucks at their job. And now I'm like, do you suck or do you suck at AI? Like, I'm not
Right.
really too clear here.
Yeah.
Like, is it your
You're just
thinking? Is it the AI? Like,
passing
We've
it along to
created
AI now.
we've
Yeah.
created a new vagueness in "Do you suck?"
Do you suck at AI?
is it you? Is it AI? Is it me? Is it my AI? I'm not too sure.
There's another kind of cognitive element that I find really interesting and fun with AI. We were talking a little bit earlier, like I applaud anyone who acknowledges, blind spots or kind of gaps in themselves or thinking or anything, like good on you for being honest enough to like acknowledge that a blind spot could exist. But it's a great way of using AI from a thinking perspective of like, hey, in my I wrote a thing. What are my blind spots in this? What am I not thinking about or considering, or angles that I could bring out? Or in one of my favorite use cases of AI is in systems. Like where am I weak from a security perspective with this system that we've created? How much better could my AI query be if I had these additional data sources plugged in? Those kinds of things. Like I just think that's a really cool use of AI is like blind spot detection, be it again in our own thinking or in systems.
Yeah. I mean, that's honestly probably why I kind of got ahead of stuff in AI early. Like from day one, I'd say like, is my thinking wrong on this?
Yeah.
Is your thinking wrong
Am
on
I
this?
silly?
Who
Yeah.
is stupid here, me or you? Like, let's
Raise your
figure it out
hand
right
if
now.
you, yeah.
And it's hard as person to get blind, if you have blind spots, which we all do, and then you get them checked in your face, it's tough. It's the same thing like with your systems though. If you're a security guy and you think you kind of have your stuff sorted, and then you ask like, "Hey, what would you suggest for hardening these systems?" and it comes up with a ton of stuff, you're like, "Oh, wow, I suck at my job. Now I have to go figure all this stuff out." That's how you
Check
grow though.
yourself before AI wrecks yourself. Is
Yeah.
that,
Oh.
Self
I don't
growth
know.
is
I
painful.
agree. I mean, it is, it's
Yeah. Well, there are no two other people that I like thinking with. So this has been a fun one. And I hope our audience, it's just like consider how you think about things, metacognition. Maybe Zoe, we could subscribe, to throw some podcasts out there that you like on these topics, but this has been a fun conversation as always. Thank you both. And thank you to our listeners. We'll see you on the next episode of Masters of Data. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
thanks. Bye.